Hello there everybody and welcome back to another video by your boy Elmac11 on the Elmac11 Swag channel. If you're new here, what is up? And if you aren't new here, hello again and welcome back to the channel. It's lovely to make another video. I actually filmed this video earlier. It was 18 minutes. I didn't realise you had to be verified on YouTube to upload more than 15 minutes, so I verified, but then I realised that I had to redo it, and then I tried uploading it again. It didn't work. Long story short, this is a re-recording at night, which sucks as well because it takes ages to upload these because I'm doing this all on a wonderful MacBook. Anyway, you don't need to know my whole life story, but today I thought I'd continue what I've decided to make a series called A Random 20-Year-Old's Thoughts on Blank. So the first video was about life. Today we're going to be talking about romance and kind of romance in today's world, which is obviously very different to how it used to be. Now, before I get into it, just a quick disclaimer. I'm not glorifying how romance used to be back in the day, the best way of putting it, how it was in the 50s, the 60s, so on and so forth. Because yes, they maybe had things right. There was also a lot of things that were really not great. The treatment of women, the treatment of minorities in general actually was really bad, and obviously the attitude that women were homemakers and men were the breadwinners, I think that's completely wrong. It should be down to individuals. But anyway, disclaimer aside, let's get into why I think modern romance is a bit convoluted, isn't probably putting it in the nicest way. So we've got a few points to make. So the first point is dating apps. Now, dating apps in theory are a great idea. We live in a digital age. We'll connect people, through these apps like Tinder, Hinge. And I was speaking from personal experience. I've used Hinge. I think the problem is that there's less women on those sites than men. Apps, sorry, they're not sites. I mean, you can use websites. I'm sure it's the same problem. Which is an interesting little fact. Now, I can't speak on non-binary and other genders. I don't know what the percentages of users are there. But what I do know is that essentially the reason that there's more men than women on those apps is because obviously women get it and then men make them uncomfortable. It's just the truth. Men say creepy things, weird things. It makes them uncomfortable and they go, I don't want to use this, so they get rid of it. So that's why you end up with less women. Now, it's completely understandable because nobody wants to get creeped on. You come on now. So it's completely understandable. But then the problem that creates is that because there's less women and more men, the men are kind of all fighting to kind of get the, like, or I was going to say approval, but that's not how these apps work. Like, I think isn't it, of the women. Now, again, it's completely understandable that women do not want to use these apps because, yeah, men are fucking pervs. It's just the sad truth of life. Not every man, of course, but, a lot of them are. They think they're funny, so they make a really pervy, creepy joke, and it makes the women uncomfortable, So don't do that. But yeah, I think the problem with dating apps is it has problems for both men and women. Now, again, I'm not speaking for non-binary or other genders because I don't know. It's hard to say when, I definitely do have friends, that don't fit into the traditional, man, male or women. Friends that are non-binary and stuff are basically, but I haven't really asked them about this. Maybe I should have done my research. But speaking from the standpoint of with men and women, I think that the main problem is that, yeah, women are made uncomfortable by men on these apps, and so they leave in large quantities, and then the men end up, basically, it's just more statistically they're just gonna, get rejected more, even if they don't say anything, unusual. And it knocks the men's confidence. In my experience, it's not my confidence because you end up being kind of insecure because you're like, oh, is it because of how I look, or is it because of this or that? Do you know what I mean? And it plays on you. Whereas for the women, I imagine it's just another way for men to be pervy, which I can't even begin to imagine what that's like. I also think the problem with dating apps is that, like, you're showing your whole life in, like, only a few prompts, which is just not how it works, obviously. The way humans are meant to date is, you meet, you talk, you go on dates, all that stuff. You don't get that anymore. So I think dating apps it doesn't work, does it? Apologies if you hear that clicking of my bone. yeah, it's just complicated because of the fact that it's, it makes it so much more simple, which it doesn't need to be, because dating is complicated. That's just the nature of romance. It's not just a simple like yes no kind of thing. And it's also judging people without knowing them, I think, which is a problem, because again, you're only seeing a bit of someone, which I think acts as an issue. So that's the first thing, is dating apps. Second thing is all this kind of talking stage, getting close. In my mind, with the way that dating should feasibly work is, you get two people, they fancy each other, it's what's it called, symbiotic, goes both ways. It's reciprocated, that's what I meant to say. It's requited, not unrequited love. And you decide to start going out on dates, and then you go out on a few dates and get to know each other more. Maybe you vibe, maybe you don't, and then you go from there. Maybe someone asks the other person to be their partner. That in my mind, that's how it, would make the most sense to play out. Now, I don't know if, people obviously will have their own opinions on how it works, and, fair enough. But the thing that I get really confused about is this whole talking stage, getting close, all that stuff, because I don't really understand it. Like, what are the rules? And also, like, how does it work? Like, do you go on dates? Do you just message? Like, I don't really get it. Like, I understand, like, you can't just go straight into a relationship because you don't know the person well enough. But, like, does it have to have a name? Does it have to be called talking stage? Also, like, is it cheating if you talk to multiple people at the same time? Like, what's the rules? I don't understand. Someone in the comments, please let me know. But I think it makes it complicated because, again, it just takes something like dating, which is already quite complicated anyway, and just makes it even more complicated, because now we're just throwing a bunch of terms that, like, they mean something, but do they really? Do you know what I mean? I think it just makes it really confusing. What's the time set? Okay, already 7 minutes down. But yeah, I think it just overcomplicates it. Now, maybe I'm wrong, and that talking stage is just what, in my mind, like when you start dating someone, what that is. It's just a name for it. But I don't really think so, because most of the time, talking stages, people are just like hanging out and, like, I don't know. It's weird. There's like a whole thing for it, and then people will do it with multiple people. It gets complicated. Like, surely, if you both fancy each other, you just, I suppose you do spend time with each other. So yeah, it's a weird one, really. But I don't really like this whole talking stage stuff. I just find it a bit cringe, I'll be honest with you. So maybe I'm just being a hater. So that's my second reason. So we got first reason, dating apps. Second reason, the whole getting close talking stages. Third reason, the manosphere. Now, I'm probably gonna, get people calling me cringe or whatever for this, and I don't really care. I'm a feminist. Always have been, always will be. I think that men and women are equal, just as I think anyone's equal. Everyone's equal, just the way it is. But obviously, you have the manosphere who've, gained notoriety in the past sort of, or particularly in the past sort of couple of years. People like Andrew Tate, oh God, what's he called? Sneeko, Myron Gaines, all those knobheads. They've obviously gained prominence, and they've managed to convince a bunch of mostly, young teenage lads that, women are the problem, and women are this and women are that, which is completely false. None of the stuff they believe is true, and all the stuff they peddle doesn't make sense. They're all insecure. I earlier was watching, like, what those knobheads called Nelk Boys. I was watching that, what's it called, the Full Send podcast. They had Andrew Tate on. Now, I just a little sidetrack. I believe in watching people that you disagree with, just because you then understand. Like, if you're having a debate with someone and they are like that person, you can actually fully fledge out why you disagree with them, points they believe in, all that kind of stuff. And it's a 2 hour podcast, bear in mind. I watched 25 minutes of it, and I was like, this man is so insecure and jarring, I can't do it. And this is the thing with all these manosphere guys, they are all just really insecure. But the problem it poses in terms of modern dating is you now have a bunch of angry incels, whatever you want to call them, they're angry, and they're now, treating women like shit because they believe that women are shit, and because somebody on the internet told them that. Then, as a response to that, which you can't blame the women for, as a response to that, they turn to misandry, misandry is obviously the hatred of men. Bad. Any hatred of anyone is bad, especially when it comes to romance, because romance is all about love. It's all about love, dude. Peace and love, as Ringo Starr would say. Although I can't lie to you, Ringo Starr's not a great guy. But anyway, that's another story for another day. But obviously, you know, teenage lads, you know, they gravitate towards these figures because they are loud and brazen and all this stuff. You know, I watched the Louis Theroux Manosphere documentary, and it was really interesting to see these guys, again, so insecure, but like obviously they have these rich lifestyles, these fast lifestyles that a lot of young guys want, and so that's why they appeal to them. And like I said, you know, women understandably then are like, that's not okay, you know, and then they end up hating a large chunk of men, and then it, do you know what I mean? It just gets very complicated. And you know, as a feminist, you know, myself, I absolutely believe in equality. And people, I think that feminism means that you believe that women deserve more than men, and it's like, well, no, what it is just equality. You know, women having equal rights to men, which is just makes sense. And anyone that disagrees with that is just like, I don't really understand how they disagree with that. It's really weird. How are we looking for time? All right, 10 minutes. Well, nearly 11 minutes. Yeah. So I don't really understand it. Like, I think it's so, they're so cringe, and it's really sad how they have a grip on all these guys. I remember when Andrew Tate was like becoming a thing. Now, thankfully, like I say, I always thought he was a dickhead, which he is. I mean, he's more than that. I mean, he's been arrested again, hasn't he? He's got 59 charges. It's ridiculous. There's so many charges. Like, come on now, he's not innocent, guys. He's definitely done that shit. You know, all the stuff he said about women as well. You know, it's vile, and that's, you know, that's just the tip of the iceberg. The stuff he said about other groups is, you know, just as bad. But obviously, when he was first gaining prominence, I had just left school, and I remember loads of people I went to school with like really being like, "Oh, what color is your Bugatti?" That was the thing, isn't it? And I always just used to say, "Mine's red. How about yours?" Just to rage bait, because like, shut up, as if wealth equals good opinion. Do you know what I mean? Makes no sense. But yeah, so the third thing that makes modern dating a lot more difficult than it needs to be or romance, sorry, is the manosphere. So those are my three big reasons: dating apps, this whole talking stage stuff, and the manosphere. And I think these three things, if we can like fight against them and change it, then I think dating will become a lot easier. Again, not to glorify the past, because there's a lot wrong with the past, and I think humans have this innate ability to glorify the past when actually we didn't even live during that time, and there was a lot going wrong if we just look at it through the kind of lens of, you know, nostalgia almost. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a weird one really, but you know, it's a shame that dating has become so difficult. I mean, some people would argue I'm not an expert because I've never had a serious relationship. However, I feel like a lot of that has to do with my own personal standards, and also just trying to avoid all the complexities of it, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be going through like 500 talking stages, you know. I just want a bit of love, you know what I mean? But you know, I think that there is ways to mitigate the damage from these things, and I think for any young men watching this, or just men in general, like, please just respect women. Like, it's not hard. And for anyone that sits there and goes, "Oh, I bet you're only saying this so you appeal to women, and like, you know, they fancy you, blah blah blah." No, I can say, like, with confidence, that me being a feminist has never resulted in someone fancying me. That's just not how it works. There's a very, you know, tunnel vision way of looking at it, like very narrow. That's what I meant, very narrow perspective. To think that, you know, people just respect humans just because they want their approval, it makes no sense. But yeah, I think modern dating is definitely fixable, and I hope that this video has helped people understand stuff. And as always, please smash the like button, subscribe, let me know down in the comments what you think. This is going to be a series. I'm going to be doing weekly uploads on Sundays. But yeah, I just thought I'd get this off my chest because it's something that I've thought about before, and it is a shame how social media is complicated. That's like another point to make, is that obviously everyone's so performative on their, you know, Instagram and stuff, and oftentimes people in relationships that have gone to shit, you know, are showing off their partner, being like, "Oh, look us, we're so happy," and they're not. And so I think social media plays into that. But yeah, I think that we can definitely do something about it, and hopefully something does change, because we live in a very weird world where, you know, everyone hates each other, and that's not what we want. You know, I wish that everyone could just respect each other, but that's obviously not an easy task. But anyway, I hope that you guys have enjoyed, and please do take care. What time are we on? We're on almost 15 minutes. Perfect. Right. I hope everyone takes care of themselves, and peace and love. Take care, guys.